Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this June 29, 2015 Monday night edition of Nightcast. Our opening story tonight, friends, we go again tonight to Greece. There is great anxiety over the country's future. Katya Adler has this opening report.
Greeks are often associated with passion and emotion, and feelings are running high on the streets here now, with Greece perilously close to falling into an economic abyss, utterly isolated in the Eurozone.
I expect a better future for my children because I don't want them to be slaves in their own country.
These are pro-government demonstrators warming up tonight ahead of Sunday's referendum. Not officially, but viewed here by most as a vote to stay in or leave the Eurozone, whatever the price. The price of the last 5 years of an international bailout has been incredibly high, in monetary terms for the creditors and for Greece in pretty much every way imaginable, political, social and economic. Both sides now are extremely bitter. This almost feels like the culmination of an abusive relationship. Athens is now an anxious city, insecure and alive with rumours. These pensioners heard that banks closed across Greece would open especially for them. They don't have cash cards. They say they don't know how to use them. But they wanted the 60 euros of their savings Greeks are now allowed to withdraw daily under emergency regulations in their cash-strapped country. Waiting in the midday sun was too much for some. But these are desperate times.
These 60 euros are pointless. You can't buy anything with them.
The austerity measures here are imposed by the haves, the European Union. As a pensioner, I'm a have-not. How can I live with what our creditors have imposed?
Tonight, the Greek Prime Minister came onto national television to answer his people's burning questions. Importantly, whether his decision to hold a referendum on imposed austerity was potentially slamming the door on Greece's future in Europe.
I guarantee that our target, our wish and objective is for the referendum to be the continuation of the negotiations, and our government should then have more powerful weapons on the table.
But political opponents say Mr. Tsipras' government has never been serious about doing a deal.
You have to remember that all these people, they're totally ideological against privatization, free market, capitalism. They believe that they want to have a socialist society. So in their mind, maybe what are they doing is for the interest of the people. And the real world is a disaster.
With events here and in Brussels changing so fast, Greeks anxiously follow every piece of news, knowing what happens to Greece now will affect the lives of everyone here, young and old. Katya Adler, BBC News, Athens.
And friends, this is certainly the big story of the day. I've got, I must have a dozen videos here from News Today on Greece, but I've selected just 3 or 4. This is one of them. I have video. I think I will pull it up and play it. As Katya Adler mentioned, she said there's bitterness on both sides. And I've got a video of EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker speaking today, and whoosh, talk about bitterness. You'll hear it yourself. I'll play that for you shortly. I've got one next, though, by Robert Preston. And we do have some other news today. I have news of another United States Supreme Court 5-4 ruling, as it works out to be after the majority votes for it that way, 5-4, that greatly impacts Texas on something. We'll be covering that later in the program. But for now, I want to go to Robert Preston with a report on Greece.
I want to be sincere. Is it because they want to get rid of us? They are not going to do that. I will explain to you. The cost will be huge. The financial cost of dissolution of the Eurozone, the cost of bankruptcy on the European Central Bank is huge, enormous.
Friends, because I didn't give you much of a lead-in on this, you're going to hear them explaining the answer to what are the consequences of a Greek euro exit. It's examined in this video report.
This is my evaluation. Perhaps one can consider accordingly. You ask me and I answer you. It is not a plan to get rid of Greece. They were hoping they want to get rid of Tsipras, to extinguish the hope and expectation. Our government is government of salvation, national salvation, and the negotiations done throughout Europe, because they cannot accept the austerity measures anymore.
And friends, now you heard mentioned there that they want to get rid of Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras. In this next video, you'll see that portrayed a little better. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has said that Greece's creditors are not planning to get rid of Greece. They want to get rid of Tsipras. EU leaders have warned Greeks that rejecting creditors' proposals in a snap referendum called for Sunday, this coming Sunday, would mean leaving the euro. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has urged a no vote, but he insists he wants Greece to stay in the euro.
Have a look around. This is Syntagma Square, the scene of so many of the demonstrations during the course of this financial crisis, and things feel calm. People are not panicking, but they are making preparations. It seems as though they're listening to the words of the Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras. He has urged them to stay calm.
I pretty much like the way he's not doing what the previous governments were doing, because what's been going on is totally proven that doesn't work, so something has to change.
Will you be taking your money out of the bank?
I think I have to wait a little bit to see something more clear before making this decision. They say we're going to be bankrupt, and we have crisis, we have this, we have that, and people get terrorized because they open the TV and watch the news, and they don't know what to do.
I mean, the banks are closed. These guys, they can't eat. You know, my grandmother's upset she can't go to the supermarket, you know? It's hard. You know, I haven't gone through that, and I'm going through it right now, and I'm freaking out, you know? Freaking out for my family, but they always make it through somehow.
Okay, now that was Anna Holligan, BBC's Anna Holligan, speaking to people on the street, getting their views on what's happening. Now, just to really kind of summarize it, bring us up to date to the moment, here we are Monday. Talks to try and resolve the Greek debt crisis broke down on Friday, with Greece's Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras calling a surprise referendum for next Sunday, July 5. Greek banks are closed for a week, and many Greeks have been queuing to withdraw their cash. They're only allowed to withdraw a certain percentage, 40 to 60% a day. And then you just heard the BBC's Anna Holligan speaking to Greeks on the streets of Athens to find out their views on the country's debt crisis. Now, next, friends, I have that video I told you I would have with Jean-Claude Juncker. And in this, you're going to hear him say, "I feel a little bit betrayed." And you'll hear that, what I mentioned to you, and what was mentioned in the first video. There's bitterness on both sides. You can hear it coming forth from Mr. Juncker. Just give a listen on this one.
So I am particularly sad by what Europe has seen last Saturday. In one night,
la conscience européenne a pris un sacré coup.
Europe suffered a major blow, and goodwill was flown to the wind. Egotism, tactical games, populist games took precedence over other aspects. And after all my efforts and the efforts made by the Commission and by other institutions involved in the process, I feel a little betrayed because not due consideration is being given to my personal efforts and the efforts of others who were very numerous and made a sustained effort. There have been many rumours, and that's really blocked out the voice of those who have worked tirelessly, day and night. And I admire those who are working with me. They have not spared any efforts to keep the European family united. The agreements, the disagreements were over-dramatised, and that meant that it was not possible to reach an agreement in the interest of all. It's in the interest of all, and of course in the interest of the Greeks in particular. We hear reference made to an ultimatum, a take-it-or-leave-it agreement. We've heard reference to blackmail. But who's involved in that? Who?
Okay. Now, if I was a Greek and if I heard the bitterness coming out of Mr. Juncker here, I would, I'd say, okay, well, I don't want anything to do with you guys, you guys. But if they'd be quiet, I might have, on the other hand, said, look, if they're giving us some space here so we can give our vote on it, and let's try to work with them. But, we'll see how. But it's as they put it, it's like this. Now, we're going to leave Greece and go to another subject here after this. But let me just pull some notes up on a screen in front of me so I can share something with you. Here's basically the president of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. What he was doing here, as the BBC analyzed it, said he's defending his role in the Greek funding crisis. He was speaking at a news conference in Brussels. And there, as you heard him say, he had done everything he could to facilitate a solution that he felt personally a little betrayed by the events leading up to Greece withdrawing from negotiations and calling a referendum on the issue. Well, would it not be best? I mean, they have no alternative. Just be patient. See what the people of Greece want to do. And if you really want to try to work with them, well, let's just, we'll watch and see what happens in the days ahead. This will give a little break from things until Sunday, because the referendum is off until Sunday, unless the EU people decide to do, something, I don't know. But anyway, let's move to some other news from today, friends. A woman who was injured, and this story out of Thailand, you wouldn't know it necessarily from the way a lot of the news sources have been lightly treating it, and it's partly because the Thai people, even though their kids are into this, they're off into celebrating this same-sex marriage stuff. And that's what this party was, where the big fire broke out, where people were injured. A woman who was injured after the fire tore through the crowds at an amusement park in Taiwan. She died, officials say. Saturday's fire started when colored powder sprayed from the stage onto the audience suddenly ignited, and almost 200 people remain in hospital in a critical condition. And there are fears the death toll will grow. Now, the reason behind the colored powder which you're really not hearing in the mainstream news too much about. I read this on one of the social medias, and I said, oh, somebody got it. The colored powder is because all of the same-sex marriage rallies and celebrations are associated with rainbow colors. And so this colored powder sprayed from the stage onto the people was supposed to create that rainbow color effect and be a celebration of homosexuals gaining government-sponsored marriage rights. In this report, Cindy Sue has the floor.
A father facing the loss of his 20-year-old daughter, too distraught to speak. The parents of the young college student, Li Peiyun, made a decision to take her off life support. She had suffered burns to 90% of her body. Her 13-year-old brother was also badly burned.
I have already lost my daughter. I cannot bear to lose my son. I beg all of you, please help me.
Li Peiyun was one of more than 200 seriously injured victims. The fire started when colored powder, which organizers sprayed onto the partygoers, ignited, sending a ball of flame through the crowd. Police have detained the organizer of the concert and later released him on bail.
I want to say sorry to all of you. No one wishes to see this tragedy happen.
He and others at his company could face criminal charges if they are found to have neglected safety precautions. With victims spread out in nearly 50 hospitals across Taiwan, medical workers were working around the clock. Many of those who suffer severe burns are fighting for their life.
The health authorities and doctors here say they're trying to do everything they can to save the victims' lives. They say the next 2 to 3 days are a critical period because for burn victims, they can suffer from severe bacterial infection that can kill them. So what the health authorities are trying to do is to use biosynthetic skin to cover the victims' wounds and to help them heal. But despite Taiwan's medical advances, the health authorities tell me that some of the victims may not survive because they have been so severely burned. So the death toll could rise.
The investigation, meanwhile, continued. A local company which sold color powder to the concert organizers has told the media that their client had been warned that the material was flammable. As the authorities probe what caused this tragedy that has damaged so many young people's lives, many are also wondering why the government had not put restrictions on the use of such a dangerous substance until now. Cindy Sue, BBC News, Taipei.
All right, friends, and although it may have been totally a careless type of accident-caused thing, it's the association with something in the Bible could give us good reason, should cause you in such a tragedy to just pause and give thought to, those who are familiar with the Bible. We're going to immediately say, wow, this sure is similar to the situation in Sodom and Gomorrah, where those people were being sexually perverse and immoral. And, no matter how people humanly reason it, you get down to what God says about the seventh command about not committing adultery. And, all right, so they're covering their adultery by, adultery with somebody of the same sex. That used to mean with somebody else's marital partner, of the opposite sex. Well, we'll cover it by having the government say that we're married. But, some people have got the good sense to recognize and realize that government did not create marriage. God created marriage. And in the United States here, God created it long before the United States became a country and long before any other governments. Adam and Eve, God married them in the Garden of Eden. He took Eve as a rib from the side of Adam, made a woman for Adam, and later, as he explained it all, he told them, male and female, and what doesn't work about same-sex marriage, a man and a man and a woman, God's command was to go and multiply and replenish, and fill the earth, multiply. Two men cannot multiply. Two women cannot multiply. Oh, well, we'll adopt children. Well, where did the children you adopted come from? They didn't come from a man and a man or a woman and a woman. Duh. A child comes as the product of a man and a woman. And the whole thing, if you've got any common sense, any good sense at all, any right spiritual and moral ability to reason rightly in you, then you'll know it's just common sense. I mean, this is lunatic idiocy. And God punished that kind of lunaticism and perversion in Sodom and Gomorrah with fire and brimstone. And he warned Lot and his family to get out of there before God was going to pour that fire and brimstone down. And he said, don't look back. Don't look back, meaning you don't long to go back there. But unfortunately, Lot's wife, she said, I like it. I love it back there. And she looked back longingly. And that's what it means. And so God kept his promise. I'll turn you into a pillar of salt. If you look back, if you desire to go back, don't look back. Don't desire to go back there. Don't just get out, because I am going to destroy it. And he did. And he turned Lot's wife into a pillar of salt. Now, in Turkey, we had news from Turkey last night. Turkey's in the news again today because the people are out there still trying to rally and celebrate gay pride. But the Turkish police, as we reported yesterday, and they're doing it more today, have fired water cannon, rubber pellets, and tear gas at a gay parade event in Istanbul.
Proud but peaceful, thousands gathered in Istanbul for the annual Gay Pride Parade. But the celebratory atmosphere suddenly changed as police fired water cannon to disperse the crowd from the main Taksim Square. Rubber pellets and tear gas were also fired. One supporter insisted the crowd had done nothing to provoke such action.
The people do not hurl stones, and they never would. They do not throw petrol bombs. They just ask for legal recognition. You have seen the intervention here. This is what has been happening in Turkey. Any requests for rights are met like this.
Earlier, organisers of the march had posted a message on Facebook telling supporters the 13th Istanbul Pride Parade scheduled to take place has suddenly been banned by the governorate using the month of Ramadan as the reason without any announcement. Scenes like this, showing the police response, were condemned on social media. The musician Lady Gaga, with 48 million followers on Twitter, asked, Istanbul, who are these leaders? Stop attacking innocent, happy people who are celebrating. This is madness. This is inhumane. Homosexuality itself is not a crime in Turkey, but homophobia is said to be widespread.
We want same-sex marriages to be legalised like many European countries. We want normalisation. We want LGBT members not to be killed.
2 people were reported to have been injured during the clashes. It's still not clear why police intervened in the way they did at an event which in previous years has been celebrated as the biggest gay pride parade in the Muslim world. Ben Bland, BBC News.
All right, friends, and I have a report in from today's news that may explain something. Not only is Greece not able to work out their situation with the EU, but the United States and the other European leaders, the P5+1, the plus one being Germany, have not really been able to bang down a deal with Iran to finalize it. That final stretch of trying to seal a deal curbing Iran's nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of sanctions, had a deadline set for tomorrow, June 30, to finalize the agreement. But if an agreement is made, what will it mean for the Iranian economy and for those living and working there? Amir Pavir from the BBC's Persian service has put together a little video with toys, and he's got some sound effects and some music that I may not have license coverage for, so I'm going to try to knock that out, at least in the version that goes into YouTube. And I think this will help your understanding. It was helpful to mine. He did a good job. Amir did a good job. I'm putting this little video together. Let's roll it, and I'll try to catch the sound effects and the music that could cause us a problem on YouTube if I don't. Here we go.
A total trade embargo. For example, Iranian cargo ships cannot travel to ports in the European Union, and those traveling elsewhere in the world are denied cover by European insurers who dominate this market. The money of the oil it sells, a total of $120 billion. And if sanctions are removed, this huge amount of money will flow back to the country, financing big projects and fueling the cash-starved economy of Iran. From consumer goods to retail, will be heading back to the world's biggest untapped market.
For ordinary Iranians? All right, those of you watching live, you got to hear that last part, even with the music. But those of you watching from the archive, I had to snip that because, you know, it was just a violin playing. Somebody's going to claim that's theirs and cause us a problem. We have one more story for tonight, friends, to cover. Report tonight, since this is a big deal out of Greece. The European Commission chief, Jean-Claude Juncker, you heard him in a video earlier. He said he feels betrayed by the egotism shown by Greece in failed debt talks. But thousands of people in Greece have suffered years of austerity, and they've gathered in Athens in a show of support for their government. The BBC's Ross Atkins said there were now three possible outcomes. We want to hear this for the Greece people in the long-running saga.
We've got three possible outcomes here. One, somehow Greece and the Eurozone plucks a deal out of the hat at the last moment and it meets its deadline on Tuesday. That seems hugely unlikely. Second option is it votes yes in this referendum on Sunday, yes to the reforms offered by the Eurozone. Angela Merkel said, well, perhaps we could have negotiations if there's a yes vote. That way, possibly Greece and the Eurozone and the European Central Bank could find a way forward. The third option is Greece votes no on Sunday. Angela Merkel was pretty blunt about this earlier. If that happens, Greece in the Eurozone, Greece in the European Union looks very unlikely. And in that case, yes, that debt of over 300 billion euros may well have to be written down by the Eurozone, the IMF and other creditors. It sounds like an awful lot of money. Actually, it's about 2 to 3% of annual GDP in the Eurozone. It's a big hit, but most analysts believe the Eurozone would be able to wear it if it had to.
All right, friends, we opened with Greece, we closed with Greece there, and good explanation by the last reporter. And you know, that Greece thing could, and we sandwiched in the, we opened with it, we closed with it, we sandwiched in the middle there some stories related to the same-sex marriage rallies and celebrations, one that turned into a fireball thing and burned a lot of people, sadly to see. We've got some things we can pray about tonight, friends, before we go to bed, asking God to please bring your kingdom. And with, it's been in the news the past couple of days with the United States Supreme Court voting 5-4 to no states can ban same-sex marriage now because of the Supreme Court of the United States ruling. The Supreme Court of the United States also had a 5-4 ruling today that relates to our friends in Texas against their anti-abortion laws. And the United States Supreme Court in a 5-4 ruling today has blocked Texas anti-abortion law. And all of that, friends, leads up to much more quickly we'll be seeing well, let me get the right button working over here. Right, much more quickly we're going to be seeing the fifth seal, the next major event in prophecy to happen, the Great Tribulation. Another way to say that is mega trouble or much great trouble. But the King James Version renders it Great Tribulation, and many people can relate to that as a prophecy of Jesus Christ, one that's associated with, that is what Jesus Christ described in plain language, the fifth seal, the next seal to open up, the next seal that represents prophecy, the next major event in prophecy to occur will be the Great Tribulation. And what will bring that about will be Europe coming into some configuration of 10 states, countries, regions, however it's worked out, who will have 10 leaders who will give their power. In other words, they'll vote in an emperor, a head, a leader whom the Bible calls the beast, and he'll be crowned by the Pope, because it's going to be a revival of the Holy Roman Empire. So the Pope will crown him. The Pope will hold the coronation ceremony. The Pope has done this in the past in Germany, in the city of Frankfurt, on the second floor of the Romer building, where the Kaisersaal is located. Kaisersaal, German for the Emperor's Hall. Yes, it was blown up toward the end of World War II by the Allies, but then thanks to the good old American taxpayers and the Marshall Plan, the Kaisersaal, the Emperor's Hall, was rebuilt. And as many of the portraits and statues that could be rounded up or reconstructed were put in that Emperor's Hall. It's a great place to visit while you're in Europe. If you get to Germany, go to Frankfurt, go to the second floor Romer building, and go into the Emperor's Hall and see all these statues of the past kings and emperors, including those who are revealed in Revelation 17:10 as the 7 kings, the major kings of the Roman Empire. We've got them on the wall here in our studio. If I come out over on this side here, you can see, we can zoom in on that. I've done that many times. I'm just going to go in real quickly tonight because we want to wrap it up. But there have been 6 so far. Revelation 17:10 talks about 7. There are 7 kings, it says in all. It says 5 are fallen and 1 is. But the time that prophecy in Revelation 17:10 was written for was between 1936 and 1945. The one that is was Mussolini, and he has come and he has gone. And I'll zoom in on him for just a second. He was killed on April 28, 1945, and then hung upside down along with his comrades who they killed and his mistress. And they hung them all upside down from a canopy of an Esso gasoline station in Italy. And that, on that date, April 28, 1945, ended the 6th reign by the 6th head of the Holy Roman Empire, that of Mussolini, which began in 1936. And God's apostle for the latter days, Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong, announced that on his coast-to-coast radio station, which was also broadcasting 100,000 watts out of Mexico and up at 50,000-watt stations that got up into Canada. And he announced this 6th head, proclaimed by Mussolini himself after he invaded Ethiopia, and said, "I have restored the Holy Roman Empire, Il Duce." And a word meaning 666, and interesting, he being also the 6th head. And Revelation 17:10 says that after him will come another. There's one more to come. And that final one to come will be the seventh and final head of the revived Holy Roman Empire, the beast. And that beast will, well, as long as we're into this, Stephen, let's just go back in there for a second. This beast, let's zoom into this one. He will, again, wear this crown of the Holy Roman Empire for its last time. He'll be the seventh and final head of the Holy Roman Empire. What you see in the middle of this slide is the actual crown. Big gawky, big thing with old gawky jewels on it. I've seen it with my own eyeballs. It's still on display. Public can see it behind big heavy glass. It's inside a big heavy glass cage inside the royal treasury in Vienna, Austria. Like I said, I've been there, took my own picture. Nearly got my camera confiscated. The only official pictures allowed of that crown are those taken by the government, the Vienna government. Or maybe they'll let the European EU government come in there now and do it. But that crown is well protected. It's on display. It will be worn again for one last time. And when it is worn, we're going to see all hell break loose, as if it were. And it will be hell in a sense, because the Great Tribulation is the wrath of Satan. It's not the wrath of God. That comes later in the seventh seal during the day of the Lord. If men during this time of Great Tribulation, if they bow down and worship the image of the beast who wears this crown, and if they refuse to not work on the Sabbath, in other words, if they work on the Sabbath, which the beast will require people to do, else if they won't work on the Sabbath, and if they won't bow down to the beast will martyr these people who refuse to take the mark of the beast. Now, those who do take the mark of the beast, they will then, let's come out and go over here to the slide that has the charts on it. All seven seals are on this slide. After the fifth seal, the Great Tribulation, which will last 2.5 years, a time and a half, then there will be heavenly signs, then there will be the sealing of 144,000, then the seventh seal, which is a 1-year-long period known as the Day of the Lord. And that day is your clue to the year there, because a day in prophecy is as a year with the Lord. A day in prophecy is a year. And it's the seventh seal, but it consists of 7 trumpets. And the seventh, the last trumpet, Christ returns, and then he pours out the 7 last plagues. Now, that's all I'm going to say about that today, at this time. But if you want to know more, you can stay with this program. We might give some little details here and there more often. And then on the weekends, for those who are really interested, you can contact me, and I'll tell you how to get to another channel where we do something on the Sabbath, on the Saturday, the Sabbath, the seventh day of the week, where we go into more details of this kind of thing. And we have Mr. Herbert Armstrong speaking by recordings and videos explaining these things in great detail. Friends, that's it for tonight, this Monday night, God willing, and the creek don't rise. Tuesday night with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy right here on Nightcast. Until next time, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying so long and good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.